Alright, everybody, welcome back to another week of brewing here on TCGplayer.com. I'm Conley Woods, and we're going to be turning the tables a little bit this time, and we're not going to be focusing exclusively on brews. Instead, what I'm going to be focusing on for this week, and likely the next 2 weeks, is my Grand Prix Denver list. And we're going to kick it off this week. We're going to take it through all kinds of testing, all kinds of refinement, work heavily on the sideboard, go over every detail in regards to every single matchup. We're going to get everything down like the back of our hand. And of course, not all of this is going to be shown in the videos. So if you're interested in specific matchups and stuff as we take this further in the weeks to come, definitely be checking out the articles, looking at updated deck lists and whatnot. This week is probably going to be the most similar to what we do traditionally because it's basically in the brewing process. This is the debut of this version of the deck, but expect the coming weeks to be focusing on this specific deck, and we're gonna a bunch of cards will change and stuff, but the basic core elements and idea are going to remain the same. So you've seen me work with this deck before, but it's gotten some extreme changes with a new set that have made it way better, and so I wanted to explore it. It's mono black Eldrazi. And the kind of way I've always built mono black Eldrazi is a little less aggressive than you can. You can put stuff like Reaver drones and a really aggressive 1- and 2-drop creatures and just try to beat down. That is one way you could play black Eldrazi. I have been leaning towards a more mid-range, hand disruption heavy version of the deck that can win long games, but also is very proactive in terms of its aggression. So with the new set, we picked up all kinds of tools for this deck, and as a result, it kind of plays a little different than it used to, but a lot of the core elements are the same. So we're still ripping apart people's hands. Now we have Harsh Scrutiny, which I think is an underrated card, and I'm probably going to end up putting more of these in the sideboard. The big deck that this fights against right now is Blue-White Flash. Taking away spell quellers when they don't have access to them, getting some of these Reflector Mage the turn before they were counting on casting it, taking a Selfless Spirit that was getting set up for something. All these cards just can completely throw somebody off their game plan. Somebody keeps Thopter plus Thraben Sentry, and they have no other 1- or 2-drop creatures, and they're all in on that Thraben Sentry activating the Thopter. And you're on the play, and you Harsh Scrutiny it away. You can completely dismantle their game plan. And unlike most discard spells like Thoughtseize and stuff, this doesn't come with a downside. This comes with Scry 1, which is an extremely powerful thing to be throwing around on such a strong card. So Scry 1 makes this card, I think, definitely worth looking at your main deck. Against control decks, you're going to be taking out Torrential Gearhulks and stuff, so that's perfectly reasonable. Against Delirium, you're going to be hitting Emrakuls. And then against all the energy and combo decks, they all have very specific cards you can take away as well. So I think this is a viable card right now, and I think we'll probably have more in the sideboard, but I want to give it a shot as a 2 of them to start. Then we go to some classics that I would always play in my mono black decks. For Transgress, I think this is one of the reasons to play a mono black Eldrazi deck or a black Eldrazi deck in general. I just think it's a really strong card. It has synergy with your other cards. Exiling is very important in this format. And it's just good in basically every single matchup. Bearer of Silence is another card. There's just too much value here to pass up. 4 mana for an Edict. More importantly, the Edict cannot be countered. It can by Summary Dismissal, but that's it, because it is a triggered ability. And it happens on the stack, not when the Bearer of Silence resolves. So this card is just awesome. It's a 2-1 flyer. It works well with Ruins of Worn Reef, which we'll get to a little bit later. It's just all around solid. I'm trying 2 copies of Collective Brutality. I love this card more than most people, and it might be bad right now. But the idea is I wanted some more hand disruption. I want a little bit of removal. This kind of does both. Also, the Drain Life effect does come into play when you're playing an aggressive deck like this. So all around, just the versatility of it, I just wanted to give it a shot. I figured 4 Harsh Scrutiny is obviously out of the question, so I'm trying 2 Collective Brutality and 2 Harsh Scrutiny to kind of balance each other out. That with the 4 Transgress the Mind, and then 4 Thought-Knot Seer, which is another stand-in Eldrazi feature. That makes for 12 main deck hand disruption spells. And then once you move to the sideboard, you have 14 plus 2 Distended Mindbenders. So you can even go up to 16 if you want to count these as your straight up hand disruption. I guess they are. So you go up to 16 hand disruption. But they're all different. They're all doing different stuff. None of them are really, whiffing completely. Like, these are going to give you a scry at the least. These are going to have other utility when you draw them if your hand's empty. or if their hand's empty, excuse me. Thought-Knot Seers obviously on a 4/4 body. Extended Mindbender's on a 5/5. So all these, you're not going to necessarily run yourself out of juice, but you get to destroy opposing hands while applying pressure, and that's kind of one of the beautiful things about this deck. However, as I mentioned, there were some great cards picked up in the Kaladesh for this deck, and that starts with the 8, well, I guess it started with Harsh Scrutiny, but continues with 8, make that 10 2-drop artifacts for the deck. 4 Smuggler Copters, arguably the best card in Standard, definitely a top 5 card, just great all around and great in this deck. It has synergy with Scrap Heap Scrounger, which has a return from graveyard ability, activates for a black mana, 3/2, just great all around again. We do have a lot of creatures that cannot block in this deck, which is worth noting. Bearer of Silence, Scrap Heap Scrounger, Thopter has some difficulties blocking sometimes, and then Reality Smasher is often sideways. So really the only creatures you play that are expected to block are Matter Reshaper, Thought-Knot Seer, and Wasteland Strangler, which is not many. So it's just something worth noting that we're a little worse on defense because of Scrap Heap Scrounger, but I think it's worth the trade-off on offense. Scrap Heap Scrounger's ability to return from the graveyard to the battlefield is great because you can do it at instant speed, and it combos very, very well with Ruins of Warnreef, giving you gigantic creature or gigantic threat at instant speed, maybe when the opponent didn't even expect it. Moving up to Key to the City, I wanted to have a little bit of a draw engine in the deck and a little bit of a way to get in some late game damage. Key to the City combos amazing well with Thought-Knot Seer, Reality Smasher, anything with a bunch of Ruins of Warnreef counters on it. It's good against control, pretty good against most mid-range decks. It's pretty bad against aggro, which is why there's only 2 in here, but it still can come up and draw you a card if you're a little flooded or whatever. So it has its moments, even against aggro. It's not completely dead. So we're giving 2 copies of it a shot, and it's been very good so far. The 3-drop slot, we have only 2 Wasteland Stranglers. I have a 3rd one on the side, and I could even put the 4th one on the side. The main reason that we have less of this, while I think that the ability is quite strong, and maybe it's deserving of more copies simply because of how strong the ability is. Like I could see, a Key to the City going or a Titan's Presence going easily in favor of a Wasteland Strangler. However, with only a few ways to exile things early on, I was a little concerned. So really the only guaranteed curve way to do a turn 3 Wasteland Strangler is Transgress the Mind on turn 2, which we can certainly open up with that, and it works out. But I was a little concerned just of 4 Wasteland Stranglers and playing a vanilla 3/2 too often. In terms of other ways to exile, we do have the 4 Thought-Knot Seers, which come down later, and then the 1 Titan's Presence. So we have 9 total ways to exile, in addition to any nonsense that our opponents could be doing to exile things. And then the sideboard, we pick up more cards with Warping Whale, Pick the Brain, Flaying Tendrils, and Distended Mindbender. So we add a bunch, and therefore the 3rd Wasteland Strangler makes more sense. I'm not 100% on this split. Like I said, we could just want to have more removal on our main deck and just play 2 more Wasteland Stranglers, even though they're not necessarily going to always be active. But it was a concern of mine, and it's the reason I'm only running 2. 4 Matter Reshaper, a card I used to run less of, but in this deck I think it just makes a lot of sense. Also, we picked up more 2-drops that are just very good. Key to the City, Scrap Heap Scrounger, and Smuggler's Copter are all things that you can hit and put into play off of Matter Reshaper you'd be pretty happy with. Bearer of Silence is not, and never has been, so picking up 10 2-drops helps out a little bit in that regard. 1 Titan's Presence, I figured with 4 Thought-Knots, 4 Reality Smashers, and then a bunch of 3-power creatures, the Scrap Heap Scroungers, Wasteland Stranglers, and Matter Reshapers. I figured that's enough to maybe get away with 1 Titan's Presence. It takes out opposing Smuggler's Copters and exiles things, which is pretty nice, and is a colorless spell. Just felt like a good place to fit one of these in. And then 4 Reality Smashers, of course, which is a card that everybody knows and loves, and it beats down. The mana has also improved, I would say, overall. We have access to Aether Hub now, 1-shot black access or colorless access, which is nice. Same for Crumbling Vestige, so there's 8 of those. 4 Corrupted Crossroads for Bearer of Silence, Transgress, Wasteland Strangler, and then sideboard stuff, which is nice. Notice that the only double black card that I have in my sideboard or my main deck, and the only ones that I would be willing to really comfortable with running are double black Devoid cards, because we get 4 extra sources with Corrupted Crossroads, and I think that's really important to being able to cast a double black card with regularity. So stuff like Kaladesh is not in the deck right now, specifically because I'm worried about casting it. Grasp of Darkness is not in the deck right now, specifically because I'm worried about casting it. So something worth noting. 4 copies of Orn Reef, my favorite land in Standard by far, and probably the best land in the deck, and just makes the whole deck hum. Just a great card all around. And then 6 Swamps right now. Like I said, I could definitely see these numbers all changing. For black sources, for black that isn't devoid, we only have 4 real cards in the main deck, and for that we have the 4 Aether Hub, 4 Crumbling Vestige, and 6 Swamps, so that's 14. And again, that's only 4 cards. And then once you add the 4 devoid cards, we're talking about 18 sources, and I think we're fine there. Really, the only colorless lands are Blighted Fen and the 4 Ruins of Orn Reef in that world. So you can't get much better than that. I think we're doing fine on colored mana, but we'll definitely pay attention to it. The sideboard is kind of a mishmash, and it's something I expect to work on over time and improve as Grand Prix Denver gets closer. Right now we have a lot of extra copies of cards and then a couple of standouts. So we have like extra copy of Collector Brutality, extra copy of Key to the City, extra copy of Wasteland Strangler, extra copy of... I guess we don't have an extra copy of Warping Wheel, but Warping Wheel is similar to Collector Brutality. It's basically a versatile do-anything card. It gives you another Exiler. Counters Sweepers is the big thing. And we have one of that we can mess with. We have one Pick the Brain, which is another random hand hate card, but it basically is the 5th Transgress the Mind. We just don't have a 5th Transgress the Mind, so we're going to Pick the Brain instead. One Fleetwheel Cruiser, which is essentially the 5th Reality Smasher. For against matchups where you really need to get aggressive, you can bring this in and beat down a little bit more. 2 copies of Distended Mindbender against Control and Combo, and all the like emerged decks and stuff. This just comes down and finishes the job of all of our other hand hate and just takes away their last couple cards, and then also beats down pretty nicely. A good combo with Titan's Presence, good combo with Key to the City, all around strong card. 4 Filigree Familiars. This might be too many, or maybe we need to cut other cards because like 3 Flying Tendrils and 4 Filigree Familiars might be too much. But 4 Filigree Familiar, for the same reason that it is in my red Eldrazi deck last week, just feels like a really great value card against these hyper-aggressive decks or the combo decks trying to burn you out. This just gives you some life, gives you a card. Great with Ruins of Orn Reef. Yeah. I think it's probably worth running some number of this. I don't know if 4 is the correct number, but 4 is in there for now. 3 copies of Flaying Tendrils. I think this is one of the better sweepers in Standard if you have access to it. But at the same time, our deck is pretty weak to it. A lot of 2 toughness things: Scrap Heap Scrounger, Bearer of Silence, Matter Reshaper, Wasteland Stringer, all 2 toughness, and all things that we don't want to exile. So, our deck's not exactly the strongest against it, but if we play a slower game and we set up Ruins of Orn Reef on our creatures, then we can go ahead and throw out a Flaying Tendrils and then play our guys either ahead of time bigger or after Flaying Tendrils and reap the benefits like Wasteland Strangler, which will now have exiled cards to feed on. But yeah, that is the sideboard. We're going to take it for some matches today, probably 3 matches, maybe 4 if we have time. And then, like I said, we're going to keep working on this over the next couple of weeks. So expect big changes and a lot of details in the articles and in the videos in the weeks to come. And if you're looking for a deck for GP Denver, if you like to say you're undecided, definitely give this a consideration and stick with me for the next couple of weeks, and we'll see if we have a sweet brew on our hands. We're going to go through every matchup that we can possibly think of in Standard. We're going to go through all the sideboarding, so definitely stay tuned. And yeah, with that said, let's jump into some matches for TCGplayer.com. I'm Conley Woods, Mono Black Eldrazi, preparing for GP Denver. See you shortly.